So for a first-time home buyer, there's a pre-closing stage of the transaction. There's a closing and post-closing stage. So you also need to know whether there are liens on the property. So if the seller has not paid ground rent, then it means that there's a lien on the property. Then also property rates. If there's a property on the land and property rates are not being paid, then also that constitutes a lien. Nobody is supposed to sell land if the land is not registered.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the ideal situation, is that you only buy land that is registered. That's the ideal situation. And you reduce that area into your possession by probably farming or building on the land. You may not have to purchase the land for the land to become yours if you're an indigent.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, because that is part of our customary law.
Yeah.
The terms and conditions and all of that will be the same as the terms and conditions in the existing agreement, because the law says so.
Yeah.
You follow me? So the laws has made provision such that for a Ghanaian, although you have not even, it doesn't have to be expressed, the terms of the old agreement will be so you transferred into the new agreement. Property is something that outlasts you. All right. So in order for you to be able to pass down property to the next generation, it means that you ought to have followed due process. Because if you don't follow due process and the time comes for you to pass it down to the next generation and it is attacked, the way you acquire the property is attacked, what it means is that transaction can be set aside.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, so the only way you safeguard your interest in property in Ghana is by complying with it.
Hello, my name is NKK and welcome to Seso Global, Africa's leading property marketplace. Today we're in conversation with Emmanuel, a real estate lawyer whose office just recently won the best real estate law firm in Ghana. Today we're going to be talking all things buying houses and properties for the first time. So Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thanks for coming.
Okay. So let's just get right into it. Is it safe to buy a property in Ghana? Like, how would you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's safe. Buying property in Ghana is like buying property in any of the developed countries. The only thing is that you have to comply with the rules on purchasing property in Ghana. Yeah. That's how you safeguard your interest in the property, by complying with the rules.
So can you expand on some of those rules? So what kind of requirements would a first-time home buyer?
So for a first-time home buyer, there's a pre-closing stage of the transaction. There's a closing and post-closing stage. Now, at the pre-closing stage is where you are required to do your due diligence. So the due diligence at this stage is conducting a search at the Lands Commission. This is the registry that has a recording of all transactions on land. Then you ought to do a search at the High Court to find out whether there's litigation on the land. At the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority to find out about the zoning, and then we have the ground rent search. So you also need to know whether there are liens on the property. So if the seller has not paid ground rent, then it means that there's a lien on the property. Then also property rates. If there's a property on the land and property rates are not being paid, then also that constitutes a lien, which means that in the event that the property is sold, the government agency can come for the property, sell it in order to recover whatever is owed them. So that is the pre-closing stage. That's the due diligence that you do there. The other searches that you also have to do, but we can't go through all of them. But this is the barest minimum.
And this can be done with the help of a lawyer.
Of course. I mean, you can't do a successful real estate transaction in Ghana without a lawyer. And there are historical basis and all that stuff, but that's not why we are here. So let's just focus on why. And then at the closing stage, that is where you prepare the legal documents. In Ghana, currently, it is only a lawyer that can prepare a legal document. But the legal document is an instrument or a letter affecting land. So if you want to purchase property, you don't use any other professional other than a lawyer to prepare the legal documents. That's what the law says.
Yeah.
Any document that is prepared by a non-lawyer is void.
Oh, wow.
And if you are a non-lawyer and prepare a legal document, it's a criminal offense. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And even if you're a lawyer and you are not in good standing, for instance, you've been suspended and you prepare a legal document, that legal document is void.
Okay.
Yes. So that's how critical it is for you to do the right thing. You ought to ensure that you are following the rules step by step.
Yes.
So that's pre-closing, closing, and then there's post-closing.
Okay. So I'm sure people have landed in sticky situations because they have.
Oh yes, absolutely. So many people have. So many. But the post-closing stage is where your interest is registered at the Lands Commission.
Yeah.
So that means that it gives notice to the whole world that you are now becoming the owner of the land.
Yes. So when you register your interest, it's an official document.
Yes, that is given to you.
Yeah, that's given to you.
That shows that you are now the owner of the land.
Yeah.
And it's called a land title certificate.
Yeah.
So in Accra, Tema, Kumasi, and Awutu Senya, which is in the Cape Coast environment, they give land title certificates. But in other areas of Ghana, you get a registered deed.
Okay.
You don't get a land title certificate, you get a registered deed. Yes.
So is that available to Ghanaian citizens and foreigners? Right?
You mean the land certificate?
Land certificate? No, the title deed.
Yes. Once you buy property in Ghana, whether you're a foreigner or a Ghanaian, you are entitled to get a land certificate. And in fact, nobody is supposed to sell land if the land is not registered.
Okay.
Yes, that's the ideal situation, is that you only buy land that is registered. That's the ideal situation. There are instances where the land is not registered, but you can still buy it, but it's a bit tricky. And like I said, you can't do these things without a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is that how we end up with situations where a piece of land is sold multiple times?
Exactly. I mean, if the land is registered and you go and do a search, the interest of the registered owner is recorded in the register. So you know that you have the interest to the land, right? Whereas if the land is not registered, but the person is claiming to be the owner of the land, and the person transacts with another person, there's no way of finding out. You get me? There's no way of finding out that this land has been transacted on so many times, because there's no record of any transaction on the land. So that's why it's important for you to deal with persons who have registered their title to land.
Okay. So there's a lot of people in our audience who are foreigners who are interested in buying in the Ghanaian property market. Are there any key differences between buying as a foreigner versus buying as a Ghanaian?
Well, there are some differences, but I mean, there are slight minor advantages if you're a Ghanaian.
Okay.
So if you're a Ghanaian and you are an indigene, I'm just being technical now, just a bit technical. Lawyers sometimes are a bit technical. But if you're an indigene of a community and you settle in an area and you reduce that area into your possession by probably farming or building on the land, you may not have to purchase the land for the land to become yours if you're an indigene.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, because that is part of our customary law. You don't have to purchase the land because you just reduce it into your possession, and then you maybe once in a while atone tenancy to the allodial owner. The allodial owner is maybe like the paramountcy, the chief, or the family head. You atone tenancy by just giving them maybe a portion of the crops that you harvest every year or something, just to show that you are
it's
a token, a sign of respect. But you don't have to pay a dime. So an indigene can acquire land through those means, through settlement. But also an indigene can also pay for land like a foreigner does. But if it is stool land, so stool land is land that belongs to a chief and a community. So a community that has a chief is called a stool. So stool land, if it's family land, if it's clan land, then you cannot have more than 50 years if you purchase that land at a time. So the law is that if it's family land, clan land, stool land, you can have more than 50 years. But if you are buying from an individual, then
you can have it.
Yes, you can have it for a longer period. All right. So, essentially, that is the law on
the
subject.
Ghanaian side. Yes.
On the Ghanaian side, but on the foreign side, and on the Ghanaian side, additionally, is that the 50 years that you get, the renewal comes by operation of law. So the renewal is implied.
Okay, explain.
So what I mean is that, assuming you're a foreigner and you're buying property from me, I give you 50 years. After the expiration of the 50 years, your renewal is guaranteed.
Without me having to do anything.
You don't have to do anything. It is guaranteed.
Okay. So then what would stop that?
Law.
Okay.
By operation of law, the renewal is guaranteed. Yes. Right? Because the law says so.
Yes.
However, for a foreigner, the renewal is not guaranteed by operation of law.
Yeah.
For a foreigner, the foreigner must expressly state in agreement that they want a renewal. And they have to state the terms and conditions of the renewal, including how much money they want to pay for the renewal.
Oh, wow,
yes,
okay.
If you have to be so certain, because maybe 50 years from now, I mean, I don't know your age, but 50 years is a long time.
Yeah. It is a long
so if you are not here and you haven't expressly stated it in agreement, how is it going to be determined how many years has been agreed to be given to you?
Yeah.
The amount of money that you have to pay for the renewal, the terms and conditions, that's the covenant, etc., for the renewal. How is that going to be determined?
Yeah, you can't tell.
So for a foreigner, it has to be expressed. But for a Ghanaian, the terms and conditions and all of that will be the same as the terms and conditions in the existing agreement, because the law says so.
Yeah.
You follow me? So the laws has made provision such that for a Ghanaian, although you have not even, it doesn't have to be expressed, the terms of the old agreement will be so we transferred into the new agreement. But for a foreigner, it is not automatic. It has to be expressly stated.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's how it is.
So okay, just as a foreigner, before purchasing the property, are there certain things that would make you more eligible? So, like, for example, is it easier for people who have work permits to buy properties?
No. Anybody at all can buy property. You can even be in Abu Dhabi and buy property in Ghana without even visiting Ghana once.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
So there's no requirements.
Have a work permit. You don't need
criminal record, all those things.
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean, you just, provided there's no money laundering, and there's really no restriction.
Okay. Yeah. But how about documents? What kind of documents do people have to prepare to purchase the property?
To purchase a property,
yeah,
as a foreigner.
Yeah.
So the same documents that are prepared for Ghanaians. So we have to start with, first of all, it could be an offer letter from the vendor to the purchaser. Then the purchaser will accept the offer by way of a letter or by signing the offer letter. And then the parties proceed to do an SPA or a contract for a lease. An SPA is a sale and purchase agreement. Contract for a lease is also the same thing. Essentially, they mean the same thing, just have different names. And then we have the transfer deed being prepared. All right, but in Ghana, there are rules on the preparation of these documents. So the document has to be in writing. And when they say writing, what it actually means is it must have the names of the parties. It must have their addresses. It must have the consideration. Consideration is the amount of money being paid for the land. It must have the description of the land, the proper description of the land, so that you can identify the land. And I mean, it must clearly have a site plan. So which has been approved by the Director of Survey, and it's Lands Commission compliant. It has a barcode at the back. Once you meet this requirement, then you've met the requirement of writing. So if you go and read the text, and the text says a conveyance must be in writing, and you think that just merely by putting it in writing you have fulfilled the requirement, that agreement is not enforceable unless it has these things that I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. So that's why you need a professional to assist you.
Yeah.
Because what actually constitutes writing is not what is in the Land Act. That is what the judges have said constitutes writing, and this is what the judges have said.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a lot. So we need lawyers.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think something that foreigners might be interested in knowing is if purchasing property can lead them to citizenship.
Oh no, unfortunately, it does not exist currently. Okay. There's no law which in Ghana which would automatically make you a citizen by purchasing property.
Yeah.
But you can take steps to become a resident. By following the requirements, and if you're eligible, you can qualify to become a resident, a permanent resident. There is a law in the making which is called the Homeland Return Act. Homeland Return Act, yes. And I understand this law has been laid before Parliament, and I understand the President is eager to assent to this law before he leaves office.
What does the law
So this Homeland Return Act essentially creates a pathway for all persons, all diasporans who have African descent, to become citizens easily.
Okay.
So it creates a pathway for them to become citizens of Ghana. Okay. Yes, and you must be of African descent.
Yeah. That's the main requirement.
That's the main requirement. Yes.
So hopefully those two. I'm sure there's a lot of.
Well, I mean, we are all banking our hopes on that, especially the foreigners.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I believe it will go through. There's a serious commitment on government's part, and I know that recently they have gone out, to showcase what Ghana is offering to the world, and as part of what they showcase, I mean, a part of the selling the gold and all that to the world, they also told them that, especially the Africans in the diaspora, that they are looking to pass this law by the end of next year.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, I mean that's what I was there, so I.
Okay, so you have the inside scoop. Yeah. Okay, cool. So then, obviously, as more and more foreigners come to Ghana, they'll be looking to stay long term.
Yeah.
And obviously, they have children, next of kin. Is it possible to pass down property?
Yes, it's possible. It's possible to pass down property to the next generation. But like I said, property is something that outlasts you, right? So in order for you to be able to pass down property to the next generation, it means that you ought to have followed due process. Because if you don't follow due process and the time comes for you to pass it down to the next generation and it is attacked, the way you acquire the property is attacked, what it means is that transaction can be set aside.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So the only way you safeguard your interest in property in Ghana is by complying with the law. So you have to start complying with the law from the beginning, from the time of acquisition.
Yeah. Okay, so everything needs to be well done from the beginning.
Because if you do your due diligence, it means that you are acting in good faith. And once you acted in good faith, that protection covers you throughout the time you own the property.
Yeah.
You follow? Because in Ghana, the rule is caveat emptor, and I believe that rule is in other jurisdictions also. Caveat emptor simply means buyer beware.
So, can you outline some of the sticky situations that first-time buyers might find themselves in, and maybe some ways to avoid them?
All right. There's one interesting one I remember, which happened not too long ago. So a client came here, and we had a discussion on the scope of work. So I told them, we had to do a search and lands commission. But first of all, what I do is we start with a surveyor. So I get a surveyor to go on the land, we do a site plan, and then we use that site plan to do the searches.
Yeah.
All right. So she took notes and then left. And then subsequently, she came back with the search, the site plan and everything. So which means that clearly she had followed the notes, and gone to do the work. So I had to reduce the fee.
Okay.
All right. So I reduced the fee, but I put in a caveat that I assume that the site plan is correct. I assume that the search is accurate. I've made these assumptions, and so from the point of the assumption, I started the work from there.
Yeah.
So I did the work based on the assumptions I made. So recently, a client contacts me, and the client is like, so the client found out that the particular land that they went to pick faults in the road.
Oh, okay.
So the developer has to move them from the road to another place, and they did a search on that place it belongs to somebody else. So now, what do we do next? I said, well, then it means that we have to get a refund, or they give you another piece of land, but that kind of thing. But I mean, for me, this situation would not have occurred if you just got a professional to handle the business for you.
Yeah.
You get me? Like, I mean, I would get a surveyor that I trust to go on the land, will send me pictures, will give me a report that there's a wall on the land, there's this on the land, that on the land, it falls within a road, that kind of thing. But if for the uninitiated, you are just thinking, oh, I've gotten the land, let me just get a surveyor to do a site plan, without considering all these other things about people being encroaching on the land and all that stuff.
True.
I mean, so that was one situation, bad situation. Another one was someone came to see me because they had an issue with the developer, and so we wanted me to sue the developer. So I said, all right, I'm going to sue. So I started looking through the documents, and I realized that he has a lesser lease. So let's just take it that the developer said they'll give him maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
But then I go through the documents, I realized that the developer only gave him 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that means he's been shortchanged by 10. And I'm like, look, this is not right. I mean, let's add this to the reliefs we are seeking from the court.
Yeah.
So I mean, the point is, you can do the transaction on your own, all right, and you may not have any any issues. You may not have any issues, but if you do it with a lawyer, the chances of you getting it right is higher than if you do it on your own.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the point I'm making. So.
So just make sure you have a lawyer with you.
Just make sure you have a professional, and when it comes to conveyance or land acquisition, the professional that is required is a lawyer. Right? There are other players in there like surveyors, valuers, and all that stuff, architects and stuff. But they are all coming at certain points in time. But if it comes to the acquisition of the land itself, you can't do it without a lawyer, because assuming an issue should arise right now about acquisition, where are you going to resolve the issue? It's in court. Yeah. So why would you want to do it otherwise?
Yeah. Start the process right. Yeah. Okay, cool. So then now, in terms of like acquiring land, I'm sure there's different ways that you can acquire land. Can you explain the difference between a leasehold and then ownership?
Yes. That's a very good question. So there are different interests in land.
Yeah.
The highest interest is what we call the allodial interest.
Okay.
So the UK Crown has an allodial interest over UK lands.
Okay.
All right. So what it means is that they own the land forever.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. Their interest will never die.
Yeah.
That's an allodial owner.
Yeah.
Good. And then in Ghana, after allodial owner, we have what we call customary law freehold. The customary law freehold is somebody that an allodial owner may have given you like a gift, may have gifted the land to you. Okay. So by customary law, you now have a freehold interest in the land, because they gave you the land using a customary means. Yeah. Maybe they danced a bit, they eat some cola, all that. There were witnesses there, and then you give them a hen or something in exchange for the land, and then you get your land. Yeah. So
and that's yours forever.
Customary
as well?
law freehold is forever.
Okay.
Then we have usufructory interest. Usufructory interest is what I just explained, that a person who is an individual of a community can just go and settle on land. Yeah. And then the land becomes yours through settlement.
Forever as well?
Forever. Okay. That's usufructory interest. But it is potentially, because assuming you don't atone tenancy to the allodial owner, I told you should be giving. Oh yeah. Yes. Then it can be taken away from you, because because now you want to create an allodial interest by yourself. Okay. Yeah. Because if you don't atone tenancy for 12 years, then it means that you yourself, you want to show that you are the masters. You are so in by law, you are creating a rival interest, which is going to rival that of the allodial owner, which is also another allodial interest.
Yeah, okay.
You get me? So it's the gravest in law not to atone tenancy to the allodial owner.
Yeah. And you said 12 years, so that's
12 years.
The max.
Yeah, maximum. Okay. So if after 12 years you don't atone tenancy to the allodial owner, you are now claiming adverse possession, which is an interest which will override that of the allodial owner's interest. Which, I mean, so for that offense, before the 12 years, the allodial owner can just kick you off the land by re-entering, taking possession of it and selling it to somebody because you are refusing to atone tenancy.
Yeah.
That's a usufructory interest. Then we have leasehold. So leasehold is where you have a lease for a definite term, like 50 years, 99 years, 75 years. That's a leasehold. And then we have these are customary tenancies. We call them ebusa and ebu. So these are customary tenancies.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the interests that you have in land. And the fascinating thing is that on this piece of land that we are on, because this is land, this is property, where we are sitting now is land. On this piece of land, all the interests I've mentioned exist on this land.
Okay.
Or they can exist on this land.
Okay. So one piece of land can have all the interests.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, one piece of land can have all the interests. Maybe this land, for instance, where we are, it's possible we have the allodial interest in here. Because it's possible it belongs to the Osustu. We can have the customary law freehold, assuming that it was gifted or something.
Yeah.
We can have usufructory interest, and then we can also have a leasehold because I'm renting it.
Yeah.
So my interest would be a leasehold.
Yeah.
So in this particular piece of land, I've identified a number of interests in it.
Okay.
And all these interests, you have to recognize them. That is why it's imperative for the lawyer to review the documents and to see and to ensure that you are not offending the allodial owner.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. I think, let's say for someone who has a leasehold, there's the worry that, maybe one day someone can come and kick you off your land. There have been situations where, people think they have a solid leasehold and then they're sort of kicked off the land. Should people worry about situations like this?
Oh yes, like I said, I mean, look, you should be worried if you are not going strictly by the law.
Okay.
And in every civilized society, if you don't follow the law, there are consequences. So if you are an owner of property and you have not registered your land, right, or you haven't registered your lease, you should know that potentially a conflict could arise where a rival claimant can say they are coming for your land. And you have to go to court to resolve that issue. Now, if you have even registered your land and you are not paying ground rent to the allodial owner, you should know that potentially the allodial owner can get offended and come for their land, just as I'm telling you. So there are so many instances where if you will fall foul of the covenants in your agreement, the land can be taken from you. All right. So there are so many instances. That's why it's imperative for you to get a lawyer, professional, to go through the documents to ensure that you are doing what is required by law. Okay.
So I mean that would be your tip to ensure that everything is secure.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So now can we actually talk about taxes? Because taxes can be very confusing.
That's a very interesting subject too.
How are taxes affected in buying property and land?
Well, if you are buying, so I'm just limited to buying.
Okay.
All right. So if you are buying property, there are two types of property. So let's put them in two categories: residential and commercial. All right. Now, if you are buying residential property, I'm aware of two taxes. Capital gains tax and stamp duty. Now, capital gains tax is where the seller pays tax on the gains they have made on the sale.
Okay.
So if you make a sale and you make a loss, you don't pay capital gains tax. It's not a gain, it's a loss. But if you make a sale and there's a loss, and there's a gain, you have to pay capital gains tax of 15%. If you declare in your tax declaration sheet that you want to pay the 15%. But if you don't declare it, it means that it can fall within a higher bracket.
Wow, okay.
And then we have stamp duty. Stamp duty is payable by the purchaser. So prior to registering the land, and in fact the law says 2 months after entering into the lease agreement or 2 months after closing, you ought to stamp the documents. So if the stamping is done, that is done by the purchaser.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean that the seller cannot stamp also, but it is normally done by the purchaser.
Yeah.
All right.
So, like, to stamp, there's an official process, or you have to go somewhere specifically?
Yes, you have to go to the stamp office of the Lands Commission.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, it's called the Land Valuation Division of the Lands Commission.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's that. Now, if you talk about commercial property, capital gains and stamp duty apply. However, there's also VAT, value added tax, which ought to be paid if the property is commercial.
Yeah.
All right. So that's essentially, those are the taxes.
Okay. And I mean, sometimes people get in trouble for not paying taxes.
Yeah.
What kind of penalties happen?
Oh, well, I mean, if you don't want to pay taxes, then I guess if you're ready to go to jail.
Jail. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's like it's even in the law.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you don't pay taxes, you go to jail. I mean, if they try hard and they can't get anything from you, you end up in jail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's, good to know. We don't want people to end up in jail.
So you have to pay taxes. It's very important.
Yeah. Are there other situations that could lead you to jail in like purchasing properties, either as a foreigner versus as a Ghanaian?
Oh, I mean, if you intend to defraud somebody,
okay.
Yes, I mean clearly, the law is clear.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are using land guards.
Oh yes. But I feel like that happens quite typically. Like
yeah.
A lot.
So the law says that the financier of the land guards, can go to jail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for a minimum of 10 years. Yes, and I think maximum of 20 or 25 years. I have to check. But the minimum is 10 years, and the land guard, the financier will go to jail. The land guards will go to jail. What I want to see is that I want to see the police enforcing that law. There's a very good law in our statute books, but it appears it is not being enforced the way it should. And most people end up going to court to fight some matters that the police should be dealing with.
Just sad. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our conversation. And before we head into the Seso Global aspect, I wanted to ask, do you have any sort of last
advice
for first-time buyers?
First-time buyers is that when you are transacting or doing a land transaction, you have to approach every transaction as though you were dealing with a dishonest person. You have to be very vigilant when you're doing land transactions. And in Ghana, but I think everywhere else, you have to be vigilant.
Yeah. Okay, so just always proceed with some caution.
Yes. You have to look before you leap. You have to be very vigilant. Yes.
All right. Well, so now, finally, we've been working with you for a few years now. How has your relationship been working with Seso Global so far?
Seso Global, I remember the first time they reached out. I think I wrote an article and they reached out to me and they were happy with the article. And we had a chat and they were telling me about how they wanted to sanitize the real estate sector in Africa. At the time, I think they were in South Africa, Nigeria, and they were trying to come to Ghana also. And they wanted to use technology, blockchain technology to do that. And they were trying to use trusted lawyers, trusted bankers, And, for an African guy lawyer, I mean, this was like, what are these guys talking about? I'm like, are these guys serious? What are you talking about? This, So, I mean, I think that it's been, quite a journey, and I've been on the journey with them. I believed in them. I mean, I thought it was a joke, but I was like, this is very interesting, and this would help us if indeed it works. And so I was on board with them, from the beginning. And gradually, I mean, they've gotten the trusted lawyers, the bankers, the surveyors, and all that, So I'm proud of Seso, and I'm proud to be associated with the brand. I'm proud that we've done some work in the past, and I would encourage them to continue. Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having this conversation
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was so insightful. I learned a lot today, so thank you very much.
I'm happy to educate.